Hello, my sleepy friends, and welcome back to Boring Sleepy History. So glad you could join me tonight for another gentle journey through time. Let's get all cozy and comfy. Find your favorite blanket, maybe a warm drink, and settle in for a truly tranquil historical exploration. Where in the world are you joining me from tonight? What time is it where you are? Just thinking about your location, wherever you are on this globe, helps me feel connected to you all. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more sleepy tales. It really helps this channel grow and bring soothing history to more people. Now, close your eyes for a moment. Imagine this. The sun, low and hazy, filters through the tangled ivy clinging to the crumbling walls of a Roman villa. Dust motes dance in the golden light, revealing a scene of utter, breathtaking decay. You awaken, disoriented, alone, in the overgrown courtyard. You have no memory of how you got here. The year is 600 AD. The air is thick with the scent of damp earth and wild herbs. Your immediate needs are simple, almost primal: shelter from the coming night and water. But the true challenge lies within, the quiet battle against the growing panic. Let's explore, shall we? The stone groaned under my weight as I pushed myself through the gap, the crumbling archway threatening to collapse further. Dust motes danced in the slivers of light that pierced the gloom, each one a tiny, fleeting sun in the oppressive darkness beyond. The air inside was instantly different, heavier, colder. It clung to my skin like a damp shroud, a chilling contrast to the fading sunlight that still warmed the courtyard. The smell of damp earth intensified, now laced with the sharp metallic tang of rust and the musty scent of decaying wood. My hand brushed against something smooth and cold, a fragment of what might once have been a marble statue, now reduced to a shapeless chunk. I ran my fingers along its chipped surface, the cool stone a stark reminder of the passage of time. The silence inside was profound, broken only by the whisper of the wind whistling through unseen cracks in the walls. It was a mournful sound, a lonely lament for a bygone era. Each step was cautious, my feet sinking slightly into the soft dust and crumbling plaster. The floor sloped unevenly, the ground giving way unexpectedly underfoot. I felt my way along the walls, my fingers tracing the ghosts of frescoes, faded fragments of scenes I couldn't quite decipher. Swaths of color, hints of figures, all but swallowed by the relentless march of time and decay. The weight of history pressed down on me, a physical burden almost as heavy as the debris strewn across the floor. I moved deeper into the gloom, the faint light from the entrance fading behind me. The villa seemed to breathe around me, the air heavy with the ghosts of forgotten lives. I imagined families, laughter echoing in these very halls, now replaced by only the sigh of the wind and the rustle of unseen creatures. Fear, sharp and cold, pricked at the edges of my mind, but the need for shelter pushed it back. After what felt like an eternity, I stumbled upon a room slightly less ruined than the others. Part of the wall was still intact, offering a semblance of protection from the elements. The ceiling, though cracked and precarious, hadn't completely collapsed. A shaft of light from a higher broken window sliced through the gloom, illuminating a small area of the floor relatively clear of debris. It wasn't much, but it was enough. A wave of relief washed over me, warm and potent in the chilling air. A place to rest, a space to begin to rebuild my strength. For now, at least, the night would not claim me completely. The quiet hum of the darkness held no immediate threat. The sun, a molten coin sinking behind the distant trees, cast long, skeletal shadows across the crumbling floor. My throat felt like sandpaper, each swallow a painful rasp. Driven by thirst, a primal urge that overrode all other anxieties, I began my search for water. The villa was a labyrinth of broken walls and collapsed ceilings, a maze of whispering shadows where the faintest sound echoed unnervingly. My heart hammered a frantic rhythm against my ribs, a frantic drumbeat accompanying my hesitant steps. Hope, fragile and flickering like a candle in a strong wind, warred with a deeper, more ingrained fear, the fear of finding nothing. I moved slowly, my hands brushing against the cool, damp stone. The air hung heavy with the scent of dust and decay, a cloying perfume that clung to the back of my throat, adding to the parched agony. I examined each alcove, each shadowed recess, half expecting to find a well-preserved cistern brimming with clear water, a shimmering oasis in this desolate landscape. Instead, I found only fragments, broken pottery, shards of what might once have been elegant tableware, now reduced to dust-coated rubble. A splintered chair leg lay half-buried in the debris, its once polished wood now bleached and worm-eaten. The silence, broken only by the occasional sigh of the wind through fractured windows, pressed in on me. Each silent room was a reminder of my isolation, a stark testament to my desperate situation. I pushed on, driven by that insistent thirst, my steps growing more determined, my resolve hardening. I imagined the cool, sweet relief of water, the sensation of it sliding down my throat, quenching the burning fire within. The thought fueled my search, propelled me forward even as my legs ached and my body felt drained. Then, in a shadowed corner beneath a collapsed section of the ceiling, I saw it. A low, arched opening, partially choked with rubble. My breath hitched in my throat. It looked like a cistern, or at least the remnants of one. The air around it hung heavy with the cloying smell of stagnant water and damp earth. A flicker of hope ignited within me, strong enough to momentarily overshadow the creeping fear of the unknown that lurked within the darkness of that opening. Cautiously, I began to clear away the rubble, one small stone at a time, the sound of my efforts echoing in the oppressive stillness. The work was slow, painstaking, each stone a small victory against the encroaching despair. With each removed stone, I felt my thirst and my hope intensify. The water, thick with the sediment of centuries, clung to the rough-hewn edges of my makeshift cup, a crude vessel fashioned from a fragment of broken pottery. My throat, parched and raw, felt like sandpaper. With trembling hands, I cautiously dipped the cup into the murky depths of the cistern. The cool liquid, a stark contrast to the dryness that had gnawed at me for what felt like an eternity. I raised the cup, the weight strangely comforting in my shaking hands, and took a hesitant sip. The first taste was a shock, cold, earthy, and strangely metallic. A wave of relief washed over me, intense and almost overwhelming. The water, despite its unappealing taste, slid down my throat like a cool balm, easing the burning sensation that had consumed me. I drank slowly, savoring each drop, conscious of the preciousness of this newfound resource. The taste wasn't pleasant. It held the faintest tang of decay, a hint of something ancient and unsettling. But it was life-giving. It was sustenance. I drank until the cup was empty, the bottom scraping against the murky depths. The silence of the cistern, broken only by the occasional drip of water echoing in the confined space, pressed in on me. The relief was palpable, but interwoven with it was a chilling awareness of my precarious situation. This was a temporary reprieve, not a solution. The meager amount of water in the cistern would not last forever. My stomach growled, a reminder of my other needs. The shadows within the cistern seemed to deepen, growing longer and more menacing as the light from the entrance above diminished. I felt a prickle of unease, a sense of being watched, despite the absolute darkness surrounding me. The air was thick with the smell of damp stone and stagnant water, a cloying perfume of decay. My mind conjured images of unseen creatures lurking in the darkness, their eyes reflecting the dim light from above. The lingering taste of the water, earthy and metallic, intensified my awareness of how utterly alone I was, how completely dependent on this fragile ecosystem of crumbling stone and stagnant water. Slowly, reluctantly, I climbed out of the cistern, my hands and clothes slick with the muddy water. The setting sun painted the sky in hues of orange and purple, a breathtaking beauty that contrasted sharply with the grim reality of my situation. The shadows stretched long and distorted across the courtyard, making the ruins appear even more desolate and foreboding. The weight of the approaching night pressed down on me, heavier than ever before, a constant reminder of my vulnerability, my isolation. But, at least for now, my thirst was quenched. The water, thick with the sediment of centuries, clung to the rough-hewn edges of my makeshift cup, a crude vessel fashioned from a fragment of broken pottery. My throat, parched and raw, felt like sandpaper. With trembling hands, I cautiously dipped the cup into the murky depths of the cistern, the cool liquid a stark contrast to the dryness that had gnawed at me for what felt like an eternity. I raised the cup, the weight strangely comforting in my shaking hands, and took a hesitant sip. The first taste was a shock, cold, earthy, and strangely metallic. A wave of relief washed over me, intense and almost overwhelming. The water, despite its unappealing taste, slid down my throat like a cool balm, easing the burning sensation that had consumed me. I drank slowly, savoring each drop, conscious of the preciousness of this newfound resource. The taste wasn't pleasant. It held the faintest tang of decay, a hint of something ancient and unsettling, but it was life-giving. It was sustenance. I drank until the cup was empty, the bottom scraping against the murky depths. The silence of the cistern, broken only by the occasional drip of water echoing in the confined space, pressed in on me. The relief was palpable, but interwoven with it was a chilling awareness of my precarious situation. This was a temporary reprieve, not a solution. The meager amount of water in the cistern would not last forever. My stomach growled, a reminder of my other needs. The shadows within the cistern seemed to deepen, growing longer and more menacing as the light from the entrance above diminished. I felt a prickle of unease, a sense of being watched, despite the absolute darkness surrounding me. The air was thick with the smell of damp stone and stagnant water, a cloying perfume of decay. My mind conjured images of unseen creatures lurking in the darkness, their eyes reflecting the dim light from above. The lingering taste of the water, earthy and metallic, intensified my awareness of how utterly alone I was, how completely dependent on this fragile ecosystem of crumbling stone and stagnant water. Slowly, reluctantly, I climbed out of the cistern, my hands and clothes slick with the muddy water. The setting sun painted the sky in hues of orange and purple, a breathtaking beauty that contrasted sharply with the grim reality of my situation. The shadows stretched long and distorted across the courtyard, making the ruins appear even more desolate and foreboding. The weight of the approaching night pressed down on me, heavier than ever before, a constant reminder of my vulnerability, my isolation. But at least for now, my thirst was quenched. The air hung heavy and still, thick with the scent of damp earth and decaying vegetation. My makeshift shelter, a crumbling room within the villa, offered little comfort against the encroaching night. The wind whispered through the broken archways, a mournful sigh echoing the emptiness within me. Yet a strange curiosity, a pull stronger than my fear, urged me towards the partially open window. Hesitantly, I rose, the rough stone floor cold beneath my bare feet. Each step felt amplified in the silence, my heart beating a frantic rhythm against my ribs. The window, a jagged tear in the ancient stonework, offered a glimpse into the moonlit world beyond. Moonlight, silver and ethereal, bathed the forest in an unsettling glow. The trees, tall and shadowy, seemed to reach out like skeletal arms, their branches intertwined in a silent embrace. I pressed my face close to the glass, the cold surface a stark contrast to the warmth of my skin. The forest was vast, a sea of darkness, punctuated by the occasional glint of moonlight on a leaf or a branch. The air carried the scent of pine and damp earth, a fragrance both alluring and foreboding. Sounds, muted yet distinct, drifted from the depths of the woods. The rustling of leaves, the hoot of an owl, the chirping of unseen insects. Each sound was a whisper, a story unfolding in the darkness beyond my reach. Fear, cold and sharp, pricked at the edges of my mind. What lurked in those shadows? Wild animals? Something else? The thought sent a shiver down my spine, but the curiosity remained, a stubborn ember burning within. I pulled back, my breath clouding in the cool night air. The moon, a silent observer, cast long, dancing shadows across the forest floor. It seemed to beckon, to invite me to explore, to unravel the mysteries hidden within its embrace. I leaned against the rough stone, the cold seeping into my bones. The scene before me was both mesmerizing and terrifying. The vastness of the forest, the profound silence, broken only by the whisper of the wind, and the chilling unknown that lay within its depths. A strange sense of awe mingled with my fear. It was as though I were looking at a forgotten world, a place untouched by time, a realm where the rules of my known reality no longer applied. I felt a primal urge to understand, to explore, to lose myself in the mystery. But the rational part of me, clinging desperately to the small comfort of my crumbling shelter, held me back. The darkness was a potent force, and I was only one frail human standing between myself and its unknown contents. The moon continued its silent vigil, its light painting the scene in shades of silver and black. I stood there, paralyzed by a potent cocktail of fear and fascination, lost in the contemplation of the vast unknown forest and the even greater mysteries of my own sudden displacement in time. For the first time since my awakening, a strange sense of acceptance settled over me. I was alone, utterly alone, in a world both beautiful and terrifying. And yet I was alive.
The air hung heavy and still, thick with the scent of damp earth and decaying vegetation. My makeshift shelter, a crumbling room within the villa, offered little comfort against the encroaching night. The wind whispered through the broken archways, a mournful sigh echoing the emptiness within me. Yet a strange curiosity, a pull stronger than my fear, urged me towards the partially open window. Hesitantly I rose, the rough stone floor cold beneath my bare feet. Each step felt amplified in the silence, my heart beating a frantic rhythm against my ribs. The window, a jagged tear in the ancient stonework, offered a glimpse into the moonlit world beyond. Moonlight, silver and ethereal, bathed the forest in an unsettling glow. The trees, tall and shadowy, seemed to reach out like skeletal arms, their branches intertwined in a silent embrace. I pressed my face close to the glass, the cold surface a stark contrast to the warmth of my skin. The forest was vast, a sea of darkness, punctuated by the occasional glint of a leaf or a branch. The air carried the scent of pine and damp earth, a fragrance both alluring and foreboding. Sounds, muted yet distinct, drifted from the depths of the woods. The rustling of leaves, the hoot of an owl, the chirping of unseen insects. Each sound was a whisper, a story unfolding in the darkness beyond my reach. Fear, cold and sharp, pricked at the edges of my mind. What lurked in those shadows? Wild animals? Something else? The thought sent a shiver down my spine, but the curiosity remained, a stubborn ember burning within. I pulled back, my breath clouding in the cool night air. The moon, a silent observer, cast long, dancing shadows across the forest floor. It seemed to beckon, to invite me to explore, to unravel the mysteries hidden within its embrace. I leaned against the rough stone, the cold seeping into my bones. The scene before me was both mesmerizing and terrifying. The vastness of the forest, the profound silence broken only by the whisper of the wind, and the chilling unknown that lay within its depths. A strange sense of acceptance settled over me. I was alone, utterly alone, in a world both beautiful and terrifying. And yet I was alive.
As the first rays of dawn paint the crumbling walls a pale orange, I am awakened by the faint chirping of birds, a sound both strangely comforting and jarring in the desolate silence of the ruins. My eyes, still heavy with sleep, struggle to adjust to the dim light filtering through the broken window. The cool dampness of the makeshift bed clings to me, a chilling reminder of the night's cold embrace. My body aches, a dull throb in my joints and muscles, a testament to the hard earth beneath me. But the birdsong, persistent and cheerful, feels like a gentle hand pulling me from the depths of exhaustion. I slowly sit up, the rough stones digging into my back. The air feels different now, lighter, cleansed by the morning's breath. The smell of damp earth and decay still lingers, but it's softened, diluted by the fresh, clean scent of dew-kissed leaves. I take a deep breath, the crisp air filling my lungs. It's a sensation I haven't fully appreciated in the last 2 days, the simple act of breathing freely without the constant pressure of fear and thirst. The sounds of the birds become clearer, more varied. A small symphony of chirps, whistles, and trills playing out in the overgrown courtyard. I can almost picture them, tiny creatures flitting amongst the ruined walls, oblivious to my presence, to the passage of time, to the silent history all around us. A strange sense of peace settles over me, a fragile truce between my apprehension and the tranquility of the rising sun. I reach out and touch the crumbling wall beside me, the rough texture familiar now. The faded fresco, barely visible in the gloom of yesterday, now reveals itself in greater detail. It depicts a scene of idyllic beauty, a garden vibrant with flowers and trees, figures moving with ease and grace, their expressions serene and content. The stark contrast between the vibrant past, as revealed in the artwork, and the current state of decay around me hits me with a fresh intensity. The beauty of the artwork, its life, a stark contrast to my current predicament. My eyes travel across the courtyard, now bathed in the golden light of early morning. The shadows that held such power in the darkness have retreated, revealing the scale of the ruins, the extent of the damage. Yet, even in this devastation, there's a certain stark beauty. The play of light and shadow across the crumbling walls and mossy stones creates a strange, haunting spectacle. It's a beauty born of decay, a fragile elegance in ruin, reminding me of the passing of time, of the transient nature of civilizations. The feeling of urgency, the desperate need for survival, remains, but it's softened now, edged with a quiet acceptance. The birds continue to sing, their melody a constant, unwavering presence in this desolate place. I rise, stiff and sore, and look towards the forest, towards the rising sun. The future remains uncertain, an unknown expanse of days ahead. But for now, the simple act of waking to the birdsong, to the pale orange light painting the crumbling walls, feels like a small victory, a moment of quiet hope amidst the ruins. Driven by a gnawing hunger, a sharper pang than the thirst of yesterday, I began my search for sustenance. The sun, already climbing higher, cast long skeletal shadows across the mosaic floor, highlighting the cracks and the encroaching weeds. My stomach rumbled, a hollow protest against its emptiness. The air, still damp and cool, held the faint scent of dust and decay, a constant companion in this place. My first explorations were hesitant. I moved slowly, my feet careful on the uneven rubble, each step a considered act. I scanned the floor, the crumbling walls, searching for anything edible. The remains of furniture, broken chairs, splintered tables, offered nothing but dust and decay. I poked at a pile of debris near a collapsed section of the wall, half expecting to find a discarded bone or a forgotten fruit. There was only more crumbling plaster and shattered pottery shards, sharp and unforgiving underfoot. Disappointment washed over me, heavy and cold. Despair threatened to engulf me, a familiar companion in this desolate place. But hunger, a primal instinct, pushed back the encroaching darkness. I pressed on, moving deeper into the villa, following a narrow passage choked with rubble and overgrown vines. The air grew thicker, heavier with the smell of damp earth, and something else, something faintly sweet and musty. I pushed aside a tangled mass of ivy, revealing a small, almost hidden alcove. Sunlight filtered weakly into this secluded space, illuminating a surprisingly intact section of wall. A faint, almost imperceptible design remained, a faded fresco depicting what I believe were bunches of grapes. My heart leaped, a sudden surge of hope. Perhaps. I traced the outline of the grapes with a trembling finger. The paint was fragile, flaking off at my touch. But the memory of the image, the very essence of the fruit, was undeniable. My gaze shifted to the ground. There, nestled amongst the roots of the encroaching vines, I saw them. Small, wild berries, a deep crimson color. They were plump and seemingly untouched, their color vibrant against the gray dust. Cautiously, I picked one, its skin smooth and cool beneath my fingertip. Hesitantly, I brought it to my lips, then hesitated again. I examined the berry closely, searching for any sign of decay or insects. It looked safe enough, though there was no way to be completely certain. Hunger eventually triumphed over caution. I popped it into my mouth. The taste was tart and slightly bitter, yet surprisingly refreshing, a burst of sweet juice. I ate several more, savoring each one. The berries weren't a feast, but they were food. Enough, perhaps, to keep the worst of the hunger at bay for a while. A small victory in this desolate world. A sense of quiet determination settled over me. The villa, once just a symbol of my isolation, now seemed a less hostile space. The search continued, but the crushing despair had been lifted by a meager meal. The sweet taste of the berries lingered, a beacon of hope in the growing shadows of the decaying villa. The sun, a pale disk behind a veil of morning mist, cast long shadows across the courtyard. The chill of the night still lingered, clinging to the damp stone, but a warmth, both physical and emotional, stirred within me. Hunger had subsided, a dull ache replaced by a sharper, more insistent need. Understanding. I needed to know where I was, how I'd arrived here. A flicker of hope, fragile as a butterfly's wing, danced in my chest. Perhaps these crumbling walls held the key. My gaze drifted towards the villa's interior. Fragments of frescoes, like faded memories, clung precariously to the crumbling plaster. These weren't just random strokes of paint. They told stories, whispered secrets. I began my exploration, moving slowly, cautiously, as if waking a sleeping giant. My fingers, tracing the outlines of the images, felt the rough texture of the aged plaster, cool and smooth in places, powdery and crumbly in others. One section, relatively intact, depicted a bustling scene. People, their features blurred by time and decay, moved through a sun-drenched courtyard. They were dressed in clothes I couldn't quite place, their movements elegant and graceful. The colors, though faded, hinted at rich blues, vibrant reds, and deep golds. The scene was vibrant, a sharp contrast to the present gloom. It felt like a glimpse into a forgotten world, a world where laughter and life filled this very space. I moved further into the ruins, the air growing colder, damper. A mosaic floor, partially buried under rubble and weeds, revealed fragments of intricate patterns. Swirling vines, mythical creatures, and what seemed to be the outline of a ship. Each piece was a tiny window to a forgotten history, a fragmented story waiting to be pieced back together. My fingers traced the worn tesserae, their smooth surfaces cool beneath my touch. The work was slow, painstaking. Every now and then, a section would crumble under my touch, sending a shower of dust into the air. Yet each fragment unveiled another element of this hidden narrative. In one section, I found a recurring symbol, a stylized sun surrounded by what looked like olive branches, repeated again and again. Was it a crest? A symbol of a specific family? A region? It felt significant somehow. As the sun climbed higher, the light shifted, revealing new details in the decaying frescoes. I found scenes of harvests, of celebrations, of daily life within this grand villa. This wasn't just a place of power, it was a home, a community. The scale of the villa was vast, hinting at a wealth and influence I found hard to reconcile with its current state of ruin. The sheer scope of the decay served as a constant reminder of the relentless march of time and the inevitable decay of even the most opulent structures. Hours slipped by, unnoticed, as I immersed myself in the fragments of the past, piecing together the whispers of history from the remaining art. I felt a growing connection to this place, to the people who once lived and thrived within these walls. It wasn't just a collection of ruins anymore. It was a silent testament to a life long gone, yet somehow present.
The air grew colder as twilight deepened, painting, affectionate, calm, deliberate pacing, low pitch, warm tone, hint of a smile, wise. The air grew colder as twilight deepened, painting the crumbling walls in shades of purple and gray.
A chill wind whistled through the broken archways, carrying with it the scent of damp earth and decaying leaves, a familiar perfume in this place of quiet decay. I had spent the day exploring, searching for anything that might offer sustenance or a better understanding of my surroundings. The discoveries had been meager, a few tough berries that barely quenched the persistent thirst, glimpses of faded frescoes hinting at lives lived long ago. But the exploration had also brought a strange kind of calm, a quiet acceptance of my isolation. Now, as darkness approached, a more pressing need arose: shelter. My makeshift bed, a haphazard pile of rubble and dust, offered little comfort. Tonight, I would strive for something better. I began collecting. My hands, roughened by the work of the day, moved with a slow, deliberate rhythm. Each dry leaf, each small flat stone was carefully chosen, examined. The leaves, brittle and brown, crinkled satisfyingly as I gathered them, a quiet counterpoint to the sighing wind. The stones, cool and smooth beneath my fingertips, offered a tactile contrast to the dryness of the leaves. The process was methodical, almost meditative. The gathering, the sorting, the arranging, these small acts of self-preservation filled the growing darkness with a purposeful energy. The gray light fading outside seemed to mirror the quiet resolve growing within me. It wasn't just about physical comfort. It was about creating order, a small island of stability in the chaos of these ruins. Each piece I placed felt like a small victory, a reaffirmation of my ability to cope, to survive. The old crumbling mortar felt gritty under my fingertips as I worked, a contrast to the smoother surfaces of the stones I was selecting. I found a relatively flat area within the room, sheltered somewhat from the wind, and carefully began to build. The leaves formed a soft, if uneven, base. The stones, strategically placed, provided support and a little extra insulation against the chilling stone floor. I worked slowly, deliberately, savoring the quiet concentration. It was a form of quiet rebellion against the isolating vastness surrounding me. The last rays of light faded as I completed my work. My makeshift bed was far from luxurious, but it was a significant improvement. It was a testament to my resilience, a tangible manifestation of my determination to endure. I sat back, feeling a strange sense of satisfaction, and even a touch of quiet pride in my small accomplishment. The silence that followed was different now. It no longer felt oppressive. It was a quiet companion, the backdrop to my growing sense of calm. The wind continued to moan through the broken walls, but inside my rudimentary shelter there was a sense of gentle warmth, both physical and emotional. I had made my peace, for tonight, with the darkness and my solitude.
The air hung heavy and still, a damp chill clinging to the crumbling stone walls of my makeshift shelter. The sounds of the night, the rustling leaves, the chirping crickets, had lulled me into a restless sleep, a fitful doze punctuated by unsettling dreams of collapsing walls and endless corridors. Then it came, a sudden, sharp scratching sound close to the entrance of the room. It was a sound that sliced through the quiet, sharp and insistent, like nails driving across stone. My heart leaped into my throat. Every muscle in my body tensed. The darkness pressed in, the familiar shapes of the ruined room suddenly alien and menacing. For a long moment, I lay frozen,
breath held captive in my chest, listening. The scratching stopped. Silence descended, heavier and more oppressive than before. Was it an animal, a rat perhaps, or something else? Fear warred with curiosity. The rational part of my mind whispered that it was probably just a creature searching for shelter, a harmless mouse or a scavenging bird. But a deeper, more primal instinct screamed a warning, urging me to stay hidden, to remain still. The darkness felt thick, alive with unseen presences. Slowly, cautiously, I reached out a hand, feeling for the rough-hewn piece of timber I'd used as a makeshift barrier against the wind. My fingers brushed against its cold, uneven surface, providing a small measure of comfort in the overwhelming fear. I strained my ears, trying to decipher any further sounds, any clue as to the source of the scratching. Nothing. Only the wind sighing through the broken archways, a mournful whisper in the stillness. The scratching did not return, but the unease remained, a knot of tension tightening in my stomach. I tried to rationalize it away, to tell myself it was nothing, just the tricks of my overwrought imagination playing on my frayed nerves. But a sliver of doubt persisted, a nagging suspicion that something was out there, just beyond the reach of my senses, watching, waiting. I shifted slightly, my weight settling into the uneven surface of my bed. The coldness seeped through the thin layer of leaves and stones, a stark reminder of my vulnerability. The air felt thick with anticipation. Every shadow seemed to shift and writhe. Every creak of the ancient structure felt like a footstep approaching. I closed my eyes, trying to block out the images that were forming in my mind, the unsettling scenarios that my fear was crafting. But sleep wouldn't come. Instead, I found myself listening intently, each rustle and whisper amplified by the darkness and my heightened state of alertness. The night stretched on, an endless expanse of fear and uncertainty, broken only by the occasional sigh of the wind and the incessant drumming of my own heart. The scratching remained just a memory, a phantom sound clinging to the edges of my consciousness, a haunting reminder of the unknown that surrounded me.
The scratching had subsided, replaced by an unsettling silence, punctuated only by the wind whistling through the broken window frames. My breath hitched in my chest, a ragged rasp in the stillness. I lay rigid, every nerve ending screaming in the darkness, listening, waiting. Then a flicker, a faint, almost imperceptible glimmer caught my eye. It emanated from a crack in the wall, a hairline fracture I hadn't noticed before in the gloom. My heart pounded a frantic rhythm against my ribs. Cautiously, I sat up, my limbs stiff and aching from the cold, damp ground. The light was faint, a pale, ghostly emanation, but it was there, undeniable. I crawled towards the wall, my hands brushing against the rough, crumbling plaster. The air grew colder as I approached the crack, a chilling draft whispering secrets from beyond. My fingers traced the edges of the fissure, feeling for any sign of a gap, a passage. There, almost hidden by a crumbling piece of masonry, was a small, irregular opening. It looked almost intentional. Hesitantly, I pressed my face against the crack,
peering into the darkness beyond. The flicker intensified, revealing a narrow passage that descended into the earth. It wasn't just a crack, it was a hidden doorway, barely visible in the dim light of the room. The air from the passage smelled different, musty and earthy, with a faint undercurrent of something else, something sweet and strangely alluring. Fear warred with an almost irresistible curiosity. What lay beyond? Another chamber? A secret cellar? Or something far more unsettling? The faint light pulsed, as if beckoning me. The thought of the unknown was terrifying, yet the potential for discovery, for escape even, was too strong to ignore. My hand trembled as I reached for the loose stone that partially blocked the entrance. It crumbled easily in my grasp, revealing a slightly wider opening. The light grew stronger, casting dancing shadows on the walls of the narrow passage. I hesitated for only a moment, the fear a cold knot in my stomach, before I lowered myself into the darkness. The passage was narrow, barely wide enough for my shoulders. I had to crawl on my hands and knees, the rough stones scraping against my skin. The air grew colder and damper the deeper I went. The flickering light seemed to come from a source further down the passage, drawing me onward. The smell of damp earth intensified, mixed with the strange sweetness I had detected earlier. Was it flowers, incense, or something else entirely? The silence was almost complete, broken only by the rhythmic scrape of my knees on the stone and the frantic beating of my own heart. After what felt like an eternity, I reached the end of the passage. The light source came into view, a small, unseen aperture. Another mystery to be explored.
The air hung heavy and still as I pressed myself against the rough stone, the narrow opening barely wide enough for my shoulders. The flickering light that had drawn me here, a faint, ethereal glow like a dying ember, had vanished the moment I touched the cold, damp stone. Now absolute darkness pressed in, a palpable thing, broken only by the faintest glimmer of starlight filtering through cracks high above. My hand, outstretched before me, brushed against something smooth and cold, a worn, flat stone, perhaps part of a collapsed wall. The passage sloped gently downwards, the ground underfoot shifting from the packed earth of the courtyard to something softer, wetter, almost spongy. The smell intensified. It wasn't the familiar scent of damp earth and decay. This was something different, something organic. A faint, earthy musk mingled with the scent of something faintly sweet, almost floral. It tugged at the edges of my awareness, unsettling and intriguing at the same time. My ears strained, trying to pierce the silence. The wind that howled outside the villa was muted here, replaced by a low, almost imperceptible humming that resonated deep within my chest. My heart beat a frantic tattoo against my ribs, a counterpoint to the strange, rhythmic thrumming of the unseen. Each step was deliberate, cautious. My hands traced the rough-hewn walls, feeling for irregularities, hoping to avoid unseen obstacles. The darkness was absolute, a suffocating blanket that swallowed all sound and light.
Yet, within that darkness, my other senses sharpened, becoming almost hyper-aware. The cold intensified, seeping into my bones, a chilling dampness that clung to my skin like a shroud. I shivered, not entirely from the cold, but from a growing unease, a premonition of something unknown lying just beyond the reach of my outstretched hand. Further down, the passage widened slightly. A faint, almost imperceptible change in the air pressure signaled the opening. My hand, brushing against the wall, encountered a different texture, smoother, almost polished. It felt strangely warm to the touch, a jarring contrast to the chill of the surrounding stone. Hesitantly, I reached out, my fingers tracing the outline of what felt like an intricately carved inscription. I couldn't make out the details in the darkness, but the feeling of it, the precise angles and curves, suggested something ancient, something crafted with painstaking care. The humming grew louder, more insistent, now a distinct thrumming that vibrated through the very ground beneath my feet. A prickling sensation ran down my spine, a feeling of being watched, of being observed by something unseen, something ancient, and something profoundly unknowable. I paused, my breath catching in my throat, the darkness pressing in, a physical weight that threatened to crush me. But the curiosity, the irresistible urge to discover what lay ahead, pushed me forward. One more step, and then another, deeper into the earth, deeper into the heart of this forgotten place. The sense of anticipation, of impending discovery, both terrifying and strangely exhilarating, filled me entirely.
The air shifted, a subtle change from the damp chill of the passage to something warmer, drier. My hands, scrabbling against the rough stone, found purchase on a smooth, cool surface. I pushed myself through the opening, my body emerging into a space bathed in an ethereal light. For a moment, I simply stood there, blinking, the sudden brightness shocking after the oppressive darkness of the tunnel. Above, a crack in the thick stone ceiling, like a fractured eye, let in a single shaft of sunlight. Dust motes caught in the beam danced in the air like tiny golden spirits. The light illuminated a chamber far larger than I'd expected, surprisingly intact considering the ruin that surrounded it. The walls, though showing the marks of time, were mostly free of the crumbling plaster I'd seen elsewhere. Instead, they were adorned with frescoes, vibrant even after centuries of slumber. The paintings depicted scenes of everyday life, people working in fields, children playing games, families gathered around tables laden with food. It was a glimpse into a life so different from my own, so utterly peaceful and removed from my present predicament. The colors, though faded, were still astonishingly rich, earthy reds, deep blues, and vibrant greens. They weren't just strokes of paint, they were stories, whispers from a past I could only imagine. I felt a strange connection to these long-dead people, a shared humanity bridging the chasm of time. My feet sank into something soft and yielding, not the rubble I had grown accustomed to, but something smooth and cool beneath the thin layer of dust. As I moved forward, I realized it was a mosaic floor, incredibly preserved, the vibrant tesserae depicting a swirling pattern of flowers and leaves. The colors were as startling as those in the frescoes, a riot of blues, yellows, and reds against a background of deep, rich greens. It was breathtaking, this unexpected beauty in the heart of such decay.
I ran my hand along the cool surface, feeling the texture of the tiny tiles under my fingertips, a strange mix of reverence and wonder. The silence in the chamber was profound, broken only by the faint whisper of the wind sighing through the crack in the ceiling and the distant sounds of the forest. It felt oddly peaceful, this unexpected haven of beauty and serenity. Despite my predicament, a strange calm settled over me. The fear, though still present, was somehow softened, muted by the awe of this discovery. The isolation, while still very real, felt less oppressive in this unexpectedly beautiful space. I was alone, yes, but I wasn't entirely lost anymore. I had found something precious, a fragment of a life lived long ago, a piece of history that whispered stories of warmth and beauty. And perhaps, just perhaps, that was enough for now.
The air in the chamber, though surprisingly fresh compared to the musty corridors outside, did little to quench the growing fire in my throat. A sudden, overwhelming thirst gripped me, a sharp, insistent ache that overshadowed even the wonder of the newly discovered room. My mouth felt like dry sand, my tongue thick and clumsy. I had to find water. Hope, fragile as a butterfly's wing, fluttered within me. My eyes, adjusting to the shifting light filtering through the crack in the ceiling, scanned the chamber. The frescoes, vibrant depictions of what seemed to be a harvest festival, were captivating, but my need was immediate and primal. I began a careful search, my hands moving slowly over the cool, smooth stones of the mosaic floor, feeling for any irregularity, any sign of a hidden well or cistern. Each overturned stone brought a surge of anticipation, quickly followed by disappointment as I found nothing but more dust and the skeletal remains of long-dead plants. My fingers traced the lines of the intricate mosaic, feeling the smooth surface under my fingertips. The artistry was breathtaking, a testament to a life lived centuries ago, a life that, I imagined, had also known thirst and hunger. But their struggles felt distant now, superseded by my own immediate need. I moved to the walls, my fingers tracing the edges of the crumbling frescoes. The paint, though faded, still held a faint vibrancy, depicting scenes of joyous celebration, of abundance. The irony wasn't lost on me. Here I was, parched and alone, in a place that once teemed with life and laughter, searching for the very essence of life itself, water. I examined the cracks in the walls, hoping to find a concealed pipe or a hidden spring. The plaster was brittle, crumbling under the slightest pressure. I feared dislodging a section of the fresco in my desperation, a silent testament to my own clumsy search. My breath hitched in my throat. I was not just thirsty, I was beginning to feel the onset of lightheadedness. Near a corner, a small section of the floor seemed slightly sunken. Hope flared again, sharp and bright. I knelt, carefully pulling away the loose stones. The earth beneath was damp, a welcome, unexpected discovery. My heart hammered against my ribs. Could this be it? I dug deeper, my fingers sinking into the cool, moist earth. The scent of damp earth and something faintly sweet filled my nostrils. And then my fingers brushed against something smooth and cold. It was a clay pipe, broken but still intact to suggest its purpose. Following the pipe, I unearthed a small earthenware well, partially concealed under the mosaic. It was filled with clear, cool water.
A wave of relief washed over me, so profound it nearly brought me to my knees. With trembling hands, I cupped my hands and drank deeply, the cool liquid a balm to my parched throat. Feeling refreshed, the cool water still lingering pleasantly in my throat, I turned my attention to the frescoes. They were breathtaking. Before, in the dim light and my desperate thirst, I'd only glimpsed their vibrancy. Now, bathed in the surprisingly bright shaft of sunlight, the colors exploded. Deep blues, rich reds, and vibrant golds. The scenes depicted seemed to tell a story, a slow, unfolding narrative painted across the walls. I traced a finger along a section showing figures in flowing robes, their faces serene, tending to what looked like olive trees. The detail was incredible. I could almost feel the rough texture of the bark, the warmth of the sun on their skin. They seemed so peaceful, so utterly unaware of the decay that now surrounded their painted existence. A pang of sadness, a sharp, unexpected stab pierced my chest. Their lives, their world, gone, swallowed by time. Moving further along the wall, I noticed something I'd missed before. Interspersed amongst the scenes of daily life were strange symbols, repeated in a pattern I couldn't quite decipher. They weren't simple decorative flourishes. They were deliberate, almost cryptic. They resembled stylized birds, perhaps, or maybe stars? They were repeated throughout the frescoes, subtly, almost hidden within the folds of the robes, nestled amongst the branches of the olive trees. A sense of purpose, of discovery, ignited within me. This wasn't just decoration. It was a code, a message. I spent what felt like hours tracing the patterns, my fingers leaving smudges of dust on the ancient paint. I knelt, my legs aching, the cool stone a stark contrast to the warmth of the sun on my back. I felt a strange sense of connection to these people, these long-dead inhabitants of the villa. Their lives, their rituals, their mysteries, all laid bare in these faded colors and enigmatic symbols. Was this a clue? A map? A message meant to guide someone, somehow, out of this place? The thought sent a jolt of unexpected hope through me. Perhaps I wasn't utterly lost. Perhaps there was a way out, hidden within these enigmatic paintings. The symbols, I realized, weren't random. They followed a specific order, a sequence. There was a logic to their placement, a rhythm, a subtle repetition that suggested a pattern. I continued to trace them, muttering the sequence to myself, whispering the pattern aloud like some ancient spell. The shaft of sunlight moved, casting long shadows across the chamber. The cool air grew steadily colder as the sun began its descent. But I felt no fear. There was a strange calm settling over me, a feeling of purpose in this lonely place. The symbols seemed to be responding, whispering their secrets to my attentive eyes. The cool, damp air of the chamber hung heavy, thick with the scent of dust and time. Sunlight, fractured and pale, slanted through the crack in the ceiling, illuminating the vibrant frescoes that adorned the walls. I traced the lines of a scene depicting a harvest festival, my fingers lingering on the smooth, surprisingly well-preserved surface. The colors, though faded by centuries, still held a vibrancy that spoke of a life lived long ago, a life so different from my own lonely existence within these crumbling walls. I leaned closer, drawn in by the intricate details of the scene, the laughter of the figures seemingly echoing across the ages. Then the earth shuddered. A tremor, sharp and sudden, ran through the chamber, rattling the very stones beneath my feet. Dust rained down from the ceiling, coating my skin in a fine, gritty film. My heart leaped into my throat, a frantic drum against my ribs. The tremor subsided as quickly as it had begun, leaving an unsettling silence in its wake. But the silence was broken by a new sound, a soft, cracking noise from the wall beside me. I stared, my breath catching in my throat. A section of the fresco, the one depicting a lively procession of people carrying baskets of grapes, had crumbled, revealing a dark, gaping hole behind it. A hidden doorway, concealed for centuries beneath the artwork, had been revealed by the earth's sudden movement. It wasn't a smooth, cleanly cut opening, but rather a jagged tear in the ancient stone, hinting at the passage of countless years and the relentless force of nature. The darkness beyond was absolute, a chilling void that swallowed the remaining light. A wave of conflicting emotions washed over me. Fear, of course, the primal instinct to retreat from the unknown. But also a flicker of cautious hope. Perhaps this was it, a way out, a chance to escape this desolate prison. The tremor, terrifying as it had been, had also gifted me with a potential path toward freedom. My hand instinctively reached for a loose stone, using it to cautiously probe the edges of the opening. The stone felt cold and rough against my skin, its surface covered in a layer of dust and crumbling plaster. The air beyond the doorway seemed even colder, damper, almost different. There was a faint earthy smell, almost metallic, that wasn't present in the chamber. It smelled of the earth, of the deeper secrets of the villa, of things unseen and unknown. And yet, within that strange, unsettling aroma, there was a hint of something else, something that sparked a tiny flame of hope within me, a possibility, a path. With a deep breath, I pushed aside the remaining fragments of the fresco, enlarging the opening enough to allow me to slip through. The darkness within swallowed me whole, a cold, silent embrace that both terrified and strangely comforted me in its stark mystery. I hesitated only for a moment, the call of the unknown overcoming my fear. This hidden doorway, revealed by a tremble of the earth, felt like a sign, a beckoning toward a future yet unwritten.
Taking a deep breath, the narrator steps into the hidden passage, the cool, damp air instantly enveloping them as the faint scent of something earthy and unfamiliar tickles their nostrils. It's a scent unlike anything they've encountered before. Not quite damp earth, not quite decaying leaves, but a blend of both, with an undercurrent of something subtly sweet, almost floral. The darkness is immediate and complete, a stark contrast to the dim light of the chamber they've just left. Their hand instinctively goes out, tracing the rough, uneven surface of the wall. It's cool to the touch, the stone surprisingly smooth in some places, pitted and crumbling in others. The passage is narrow, barely wide enough for their shoulders. They move slowly, deliberately, each step measured and cautious. The air is thick, heavy with the scent of the earth and that strange, unfamiliar sweetness. They can hear their own breathing, a rhythmic sound in the absolute stillness. There's a faint echo to their footsteps, a low rumble that seems to resonate from the very depths of the passage. It's unsettling, but not frightening,
more of a low hum that vibrates in their chest. As they move deeper, the scent intensifies. It's no longer just a subtle undercurrent, it's a strong, almost overpowering aroma. They wonder what it could be. A rare flower, perhaps? Something long forgotten, preserved in the damp darkness. The thought sends a shiver down their spine, a mixture of apprehension and excitement. They reach out again, their fingers brushing against something soft and yielding in the near total darkness. It feels like fabric, a scrap of cloth, perhaps, clinging to the wall. They pause, hesitant, their hand lingering on the strange material. The texture is unlike anything they've felt before, smooth and strangely delicate, yet strong. It feels almost alive. They pull their hand away slowly, a strange sense of reluctance washing over them. The passage continues, curving slightly to the left. They can hear a faint dripping sound now, a steady rhythm that adds to the strange, almost hypnotic atmosphere. They continue to walk, their steps measured, their senses alert. The dripping sound grows louder, accompanied by a low, murmuring sound, like a distant whisper. The scent of the earth and the strange sweetness intensifies, filling their nostrils and clinging to the back of their throat. As they round another bend in the passage, a faint light appears ahead, a glimmer of illumination at the end of the dark tunnel. It's a pale, ethereal light, not quite sunlight, not quite moonlight, but something in between. A soft, almost ghostly glow. A wave of anticipation washes over them, a mixture of hope and apprehension. What lies beyond this passage? What mysteries await them in the light?
Chapter 19. The Hidden Garden. The air shifted, growing warmer, lighter. The dampness clinging to me like a shroud began to recede, replaced by a breath of something sweet. My hand, still outstretched, brushed against something soft and yielding, a petal, perhaps. I hesitated, a prickle of caution still clinging to me, but the scent, a heady mix of honeysuckle and something else I couldn't quite place, drew me forward. Slowly, carefully, I emerged from the passage. The change was immediate, breathtaking. Gone was the oppressive darkness, the clinging damp. I stood in a small, secluded garden, bathed in the warm embrace of sunlight that felt almost shocking after the dimness of the villa. Sunlight streamed through gaps in the overgrown stone walls that enclosed the garden, dappling the ground in shifting patterns of light and shadow. Before me stretched a small, vibrant space overflowing with flowers, colors I hadn't seen in what felt like a lifetime. Deep blues, vibrant reds, delicate pinks, a riot of color that seemed to hum with life. Butterflies, their wings like stained glass, flitted among the blossoms. A tiny stream, barely wider than my hand, chuckled its way through the garden, its water crystal clear, tumbling over smooth, moss-covered stones. The sound was a soothing balm, a gentle counterpoint to the silence of the ruins I'd left behind. The air itself felt different here, cleaner, alive. It carried the sweet perfume of the flowers, the earthy scent of damp soil, and a subtle, almost imperceptible fragrance of wood smoke, hinting at a presence I couldn't quite place.
My hands, rough and dirty from my explorations, trembled slightly as I reached out to touch a velvety petaled flower, its texture surprisingly soft against my skin. I knelt, feeling the cool, damp girth beneath my knees, a far cry from the crumbling stone and dusty rubble I'd grown accustomed to. Here, amidst the vibrant life of this hidden garden, a sense of profound peace settled over me. The fear, the gnawing anxiety that had been my constant companion seemed to melt away, replaced by a quiet wonder. The small stream, with its gentle gurgle, beckoned me closer. I cupped my hands, catching the cool, clear water, and drank deeply. The liquid both refreshing and oddly comforting. It tasted pure, untainted by the stagnant water of the cistern. The taste was sweet, clean, a taste of freedom. This hidden sanctuary was a paradox, a vibrant burst of life nestled within the heart of decay. It felt like a gift, an unexpected oasis of beauty in a world of crumbling stone and encroaching shadows. The sun warmed my face, and for the first time since I awoke in that overgrown courtyard, I felt a glimmer of hope. I sat by the stream, watching the water flow, letting the sunlight soak into my skin. This place felt sacred, separate from the decay of the villa. It was a haven, a secret pocket of serenity I'd stumbled upon by chance. I didn't know how long I would stay or what lay beyond the walls of this hidden garden, but in this moment, surrounded by the beauty of nature's resilience, I felt safe. I felt almost at peace. Hearing a faint sound from beyond the garden's edge, my heart thudded against my ribs, a frantic drumbeat against the sudden hush of the hidden oasis. It was a low, repetitive sound, almost rhythmic. A mixture of apprehension and curiosity warred within me. The peace of the sun-drenched garden, the gentle murmur of the stream, was suddenly fragile, a thin veil over something unknown. I hesitated, my hand resting on the smooth, cool stone of the garden wall. The vibrant flowers, so recently a source of comfort, now seemed almost deceptively cheerful against the looming uncertainty. Taking a deep breath, I cautiously approached the garden's edge. The stone wall, overgrown with ivy and moss, was higher here, almost blocking my view. I peered over, my breath catching in my throat. Beyond the wall, the landscape changed dramatically. The lush garden gave way to a dense, dark forest, the trees taller and thicker than I'd seen before. The sound, that low rhythmic tapping, seemed to be coming from deeper within the woods. Slowly, carefully, I followed the wall, searching for a break or a lower section. The ivy snagged at my clothes, and the damp earth clung to my boots. The air grew noticeably cooler as I moved away from the sheltered garden, the sun's warmth fading into a cool, damp shadow. The rhythmic tapping continued, persistent and steady, adding to the growing unease. After what felt like an eternity, I found a gap in the wall, a narrow opening barely wide enough to squeeze through. I hesitated again, the unknown beyond the gap, a daunting prospect. But the sound, the persistent tapping, drew me forward, a siren's call promising either danger or discovery. I braced myself, taking one last look at the bright sanctuary of the garden, a fleeting image of peace before stepping into the shadowed world beyond. The opening was barely wide enough for my shoulders, and I had to wriggle through, scraping my arms on rough stone. The transition was immediate. The sunlit garden was replaced by a dim, shadowy world, where the only light filtered weakly through the dense canopy overhead. The air was heavy, thick with the smell of damp earth and decaying leaves, a familiar but unsettling aroma. The forest floor was uneven, a chaotic jumble of roots and undergrowth. The rhythmic tapping sound grew louder as I moved deeper into the woods, guiding my hesitant steps. The trees towered above me, their branches intertwined, forming a dark, claustrophobic canopy. Each step crunched softly on fallen leaves and twigs, the only sound apart from the steady, almost hypnotic tapping. The sense of foreboding intensified, but the faint, persistent hope that it might lead to a way out, or perhaps just to something new and different, kept me moving forward. I held my breath and kept pushing through the undergrowth, the mysterious tapping sound, my sole companion in the twilight of the woods. The air grew heavy with the scent of pine and damp earth as I left the garden's bright embrace and stepped into the shadowed forest. Sunlight, once a welcome friend, was swallowed by the dense canopy overhead, leaving me in a world of muted greens and browns. Each footfall sent a shower of dry leaves skittering across the undergrowth, a constant whisper against the rhythmic thumping that drew me deeper. It was a slow, deliberate sound, like a heartbeat echoing through the trees, both unsettling and strangely compelling. The path, if it could be called that, was barely more than a deer trail, twisting and turning with no discernible pattern. Low branches snagged at my clothes, thorns pricked my skin, leaving tiny, stinging reminders of my intrusion. The air grew cooler, damper, clinging to me like a shroud. My hand, instinctively placed on the rough-hewn stone wall of the garden, remained there, a source of comfort in the unfamiliar darkness. The texture of the stone was a grounding presence against the unsettling mystery that unfolded before me. The thumping grew louder, more insistent, punctuated by the occasional snap of a twig or rustle of unseen creatures. I imagined wild animals, shadows moving just beyond the reach of my sight, their eyes reflecting the faint light that filtered through the leaves. Fear, sharp and cold, pricked at the edges of my mind, yet curiosity, a stronger force, propelled me forward. What could be making that sound? A trapped animal? Something else? The forest floor became uneven, rising and falling in gentle undulations. Roots, thick as a man's arm, snaked across my path, forcing me to pick my way carefully, my senses heightened, alert to any sudden movement or sound. The air grew thick with the smell of decaying vegetation, a sharp contrast to the sweet fragrance of the garden flowers. The darkness seemed to press in on me, a living entity, suffocating, yet strangely beautiful in its intensity. The thumping was now close enough to distinguish its source, a dull, rhythmic thudding, almost mechanical in its regularity. My heart pounded in my chest, mimicking the sound that echoed through the trees. I slowed my pace, my breath coming in shallow gasps, my senses straining to pierce the gloom. Then, through a break in the trees, I saw it. A clearing bathed in the ethereal glow of the setting sun, and in the center, a dilapidated well, its wooden frame rotting, its bucket swaying gently back and forth, the source of the rhythmic thumping. The air hung heavy with the scent of damp earth and decaying leaves, a familiar perfume in this forgotten place. My thirst, a constant companion these past few days, gnawed at my insides, a persistent, dull ache. The rhythmic thump, thump, thump I'd followed led me to this, a well, seemingly ancient, its wooden bucket swinging gently in the slight breeze. It was partially concealed by overgrown vines, their leaves a deep, almost unnatural green against the gray stone. Cautiously I approached, the ground underfoot soft and yielding. The well itself was surprisingly intact, the stonework worn smooth by time and weather, but solid. The bucket, though old and weathered, looked sturdy enough. A rope, frayed but seemingly strong, hung down into the unseen depths. I ran a hand along the cool, damp stone, the texture strangely comforting in its age and quiet permanence. It felt like a tangible link to the past, to generations who might have drawn water from this very well, their lives unfolding in the same sunlit garden that now held me captive in its beauty. A wave of apprehension washed over me. What if the water was foul? What if something lurked within the darkness below? My stomach churned with a mixture of hope and fear. The need for clean water, however, eclipsed my apprehension. My throat felt parched, my lips cracked. I needed this water desperately. Taking a deep breath, I gripped the rope, my knuckles white. The rope was surprisingly cold, a chilling contrast to the warm air. I slowly lowered the bucket, listening intently for any unusual sounds. A splash, a rustle, a slither. Silence, except for the gentle rustling of leaves and the distant hum of insects. The bucket descended slowly, almost reluctantly, into the unseen depths. It felt like an eternity. Then, with a gentle splash, I felt the bucket hit the water. It was heavier than I expected. I carefully began to haul it up, the rope burning slightly in my hands. The ascent felt slower than the descent. Each inch felt labored, and with each tug, the hope grew along with my aching muscles. Finally, the bucket emerged from the darkness, its contents glistening in the dappled sunlight. The water was surprisingly clear, though slightly murky at the bottom, with a faint, earthy smell. I cautiously peered inside, searching for anything unsettling, but saw nothing. Relief washed over me, a wave of intense gratitude. I dipped a cupped hand into the water, bringing the cool liquid to my lips. The taste wasn't sweet or refreshing, but it was pure, clean, and that was all that mattered. It quenched my thirst, easing the burning pain in my throat, and for that moment the crushing weight of my situation lightened. I drank deeply, savoring the taste of survival. Feeling refreshed, the cool water from the well a lingering comfort in my throat, I noticed something else. Almost hidden beneath the vibrant profusion of flowers, a faint trail. It wasn't a clearly defined path, not like a road or even a well-trodden track. It was more a suggestion, a subtle parting of the undergrowth, a barely there suggestion of passage leading away from the hidden garden and deeper into the shadow of the forest. The sunlight, so warm and comforting in the garden, felt hesitant to reach into the deeper woods. The air itself seemed to grow cooler, heavier, as if a sigh from the unseen depths of the forest had settled over the garden's edge. A flicker of apprehension, sharp and cold, pricked at the warmth of the water still in my belly. The forest held its secrets close, its darkness a stark contrast to the relative safety of the garden. But alongside the fear, a fragile tendril of hope bloomed. Hope, a delicate flower itself, pushing through the cracks in the stone of my despair. A way out, a chance, however slim, to leave this place, to escape the crushing weight of isolation. I hesitated, my hand resting on the smooth, cool stone of the garden wall. The wildflowers, so vibrant moments before, seemed to hold their breath, as if watching me, waiting for my decision. The murmur of the stream, once soothing, now felt almost conspiratorial, whispering secrets only the forest could understand. What awaited me beyond the edge of the garden? Dangerous beasts? More ruins? Or something else? The unknown was a terrifying beast, its shadow stretching long and dark into the dense green. Yet the alternative, to remain here, forever enclosed within the crumbling walls of this forgotten villa, felt even more terrifying. The thought of another night spent listening to the wind whisper through broken arches, of another dawn greeting me with the same desolate silence, was almost unbearable. I took a deep breath, the scent of pine and damp earth filling my lungs. The air, thick with the smell of unseen life, was both frightening and strangely invigorating. This wasn't the suffocating air of decay I'd grown accustomed to within the villa. This smelled of life, wild and untamed, a life that existed beyond my lonely existence. With a cautious step, I moved beyond the garden's edge. The trail, as faint as a whispered promise, guided me into the shadowed depths of the trees. The sunlight faded quickly, replaced by a dappled light that danced between the leaves. The forest floor was soft beneath my feet, a carpet of decaying leaves and moss. The air grew noticeably cooler, and a distinct chill crept up my spine. But it wasn't the coldness of decay, it was the primal chill of the wild. It was a challenge, not a threat. I walked slowly, carefully, my senses on high alert. Every rustle of leaves, every snap of a twig sent a jolt of adrenaline through me. But with each step, the fear receded a little, replaced by a growing sense of purpose. I was walking towards the unknown, yes, but I was also walking towards the possibility of escape, towards a future that just a few short hours ago had seemed utterly impossible. The trail, though faint, was my guide, a slender thread of hope in the vast tapestry of the forest. Taking a deep breath, I cautiously stepped onto the trail. The cool, damp earth yielded softly underfoot, a comforting contrast to the dry stones of the villa. The dense canopy overhead immediately swallowed the sunlight, plunging me into a world of shadow and mystery. The air grew noticeably cooler, damper, and heavy with the scent of rich, decaying leaves and damp wood. It was a different kind of darkness than the oppressive, dusty gloom of the villa. This was a living darkness, teeming with unseen things. The trail itself was barely more than a suggestion, a barely perceptible indentation in the soft earth, winding its way through a tangled undergrowth of ferns and low-hanging branches. I moved slowly, carefully placing each foot, mindful of unseen roots and stones hidden beneath the fallen leaves. The silence was profound, broken only by the occasional rustle of unseen creatures in the undergrowth. It wasn't an unnerving silence, but a thoughtful one, almost expectant. As I walked, a sense of growing unease mingled with a strange thrill of anticipation. The forest felt ancient, untouched, holding secrets within its deep shadows. Every rustle of leaves sent a shiver down my spine, not of fear exactly, but of a primal awareness, a recognition that I was trespassing in a realm far older and more powerful than myself. I imagined ancient trees, their roots snaking deep into the earth, their branches reaching for the sky for centuries, witnessing events I could scarcely comprehend. The air grew heavy with the scent of pine needles and damp earth, a deep, earthy smell that filled my lungs and soothed my anxieties. I noticed small wildflowers, their colors surprisingly vibrant despite the lack of direct sunlight, pushing their way through the leaf litter. Tiny, jewel-like insects flitted amongst the blossoms, a brief flash of color in the subdued light. The sounds of the forest became more distinct, the chirping of unseen birds, the gentle drip of water from unseen leaves, the almost imperceptible scuttling of small animals. The trail began to climb gently, leading me deeper into the heart of the forest. Ahead, I glimpsed a break in the trees, a shaft of sunlight piercing the dense canopy and illuminating a small clearing. Curiosity and hope warred within me. Was this a sign? A path towards something more? Or merely a momentary respite before the forest closed in again, its mysteries still unsolved? The thrill of the unknown propelled me forward, my steps quickening, my heart beating a little faster, with a blend of trepidation and excitement. A small singing bird perched on a branch, its melody a delicate counterpoint to the rhythm of my own heartbeat. I felt a strange connection with this wild place, a growing understanding that my fate, however uncertain, was now intertwined with its own. The air grew still as I entered the clearing, a sudden hush replacing the rustling of leaves that had accompanied me on the trail. Sunlight, fractured and dappled by the dense canopy, painted shifting patterns on the mossy ground. My breath hitched in my throat. The silence was profound, almost unnerving. Every rustle, every snap of a twig felt amplified, each sound a potential threat. I moved slowly, deliberately, my senses straining to pick up any hint of movement, any sign of life, or the lack of it. The clearing itself was small, barely wider than the trail leading into it. The forest pressed in close, a wall of ancient trees whose gnarled branches reached towards the sky like skeletal fingers. The scent of damp earth and decaying wood was strong, mingling with a faint, sweeter perfume, the scent of wild honeysuckle perhaps, clinging to the mossy trunks. Underfoot, the earth was soft and yielding, covered in a thick carpet of moss and fallen leaves. My feet sank slightly with each step, the dampness seeping into my worn leather shoes. Then I saw it. Half hidden amongst the trees, partially swallowed by the encroaching undergrowth, stood a weathered stone structure. It was small, no larger than a garden shed, its walls almost entirely covered in moss and lichen. The stones themselves were gray and worn, smoothed by the relentless passage of time and weather.
Sections had crumbled, leaving gaps that revealed glimpses of the dark interior. A single arched doorway, barely more than a low opening, was the only clear entrance. The stone above it, though severely eroded, still hinted at intricate carvings, now barely visible beneath the grime and growth. A shiver ran down my spine. It was a sense of unease, not fear exactly, but a prickling awareness that I was trespassing on something old, something profoundly untouched. The air here felt different, heavier, imbued with a sense of deep silence that resonated in my chest. It felt as if the very stones themselves were holding their breath. I circled the structure cautiously, my hand brushing against the smooth, moss-covered stone. The texture was surprisingly cool, even in the warmth of the dappled sunlight. I could feel the weight of history in every stone, a silent testament to lives lived and forgotten. There was a deep sense of stillness around this small, ancient structure that went beyond the quiet of the forest. It was a stillness of immense age, of enduring secrets. Slowly, very slowly, I approached the low arched doorway. My hand hovered over the rough stone, hesitant. The thought of entering, of venturing into the unknown darkness within, was both exhilarating and terrifying. It was the kind of darkness that whispered of secrets, of mysteries long buried, of things best left undisturbed. But my curiosity, a burning ember in the cold ashes of my isolation, pushed me forward. With a deep breath, I reached out and pushed the door inward.
Stepping inside, the narrator is immediately struck by the cool, damp air and the faint, sweet scent of decaying wood and earth, a comforting contrast to the dense forest air outside. The darkness was deeper here, a heavy blanket woven from the absence of light and the thick stone walls. A single shaft of light, pale and watery, slanted through a crack high in the ceiling, illuminating motes of dust dancing in the still air. My hand, instinctively reaching out, touched a wall cool and smooth, like polished river stone. The surface was surprisingly unbroken, a stark contrast to the crumbling ruins of the villa. The structure was small, a single room perhaps, square and surprisingly intact. The floor, though covered in a thick layer of damp leaf litter, felt solid beneath my feet. I carefully brushed aside the leaves, revealing patches of worn stone, almost worn smooth by time and unseen feet. There was a sense of purpose in this clearing, a focus absent from the chaotic jumble of the villa. This place felt intentional. The scent of decaying wood and earth grew stronger, a rich, earthy perfume that filled the small space. It wasn't unpleasant, more a comforting aroma, like the scent of deep woods after a rain shower. My lungs filled with the cool, clean air, a welcome change from the stuffy, dust-laden atmosphere of the villa. My thirst, a constant companion, felt momentarily eased by the dampness itself, a strange, almost paradoxical comfort. I ran my fingers along the walls, tracing the lines of the rough-hewn stone. The stone was dry to the touch, despite the dampness of the air, hinting at some protective layer, perhaps a coating of lime or plaster long since absorbed into the stone itself. The craftsmanship was remarkable, precise and careful, a testament to the skill of those who built this place. This wasn't just a shelter, this was a sanctuary, built with care and attention, a relic of a vanished world. In the center of the room, partially buried in the leaf litter, I saw something glimmering in the faint light. I carefully cleared away the leaves and unearthed a small, intricately carved wooden box. The wood was dark and polished, almost black, and felt incredibly smooth beneath my fingers. The lid was intricately carved with symbols I didn't recognize, swirling patterns that seemed both ancient and strangely modern. My heart pounded a little faster. What could be inside? It felt important, not just a simple artifact of the past, but something significant. Perhaps a key, or a map, or perhaps something else entirely. The possibilities in this quiet, hidden room felt both exciting and terrifying. The darkness held its secrets, but this small, beautiful box held at least one. My fingers brushed against the cold metal latch.
Chapter 27. The Box's Secrets. The air hung heavy with the scent of damp earth and decaying wood, a strangely comforting aroma in the hushed stillness of the small chamber. My heart hammered a frantic rhythm against my ribs, a counterpoint to the quiet rustle of unseen things just beyond the stone walls. The wooden box sat in my trembling hands, its surface cool and smooth under my fingertips. Intricate carvings depicting scenes I couldn't quite decipher, swirling vines perhaps, or stylized birds, testified to a craftsmanship far beyond anything I'd encountered in the crumbling villa. I hesitated, a wave of apprehension washing over me. What secrets did this small, unassuming box hold? What would I find within? With trembling fingers, I carefully lifted the lid. The wood creaked softly, a tiny sound that echoed unnaturally loud in the confined space. Inside, nestled on a bed of faded velvet, lay a collection of parchments, their edges brittle and browned with age. They were tied together with a length of thin, fraying cord, the knot intricate and surprisingly secure. Beside the parchments, catching the dim light filtering through a crack in the wall, lay a tarnished silver locket. Its surface was scratched and pitted, but I could still make out the faint outline of a design, perhaps a crest or a symbol of some kind, barely visible beneath the grime. My fingers, clumsy with nervousness, carefully lifted the parchment bundle. The paper felt fragile, as if it would crumble to dust at the slightest touch. I untied the cord, the thin strand snapping with a soft sigh. Each parchment was filled with a script I didn't recognize, elegant swirls and loops that spoke of a forgotten language. I traced a finger across the delicate lines, feeling the rough texture of the aged paper, the ghost of ink lingering beneath my touch. The script appeared meticulously written, suggesting that it contained something of immense importance. There was a strange elegance to the letters, a kind of gracefulness that belied the decay of its container. I turned my attention to the locket. Its weight was surprisingly substantial in my hand. I ran my thumb across the tarnished silver, feeling the uneven texture, the tiny scratches that told a silent story of time and neglect. With a deep breath, I attempted to open the locket, and it clicked open with a quiet snap. Inside, nestled on a bed of faded velvet, was a miniature portrait. It was faded, but I could make out the features of a young woman, her expression serene, almost wistful. Her eyes seemed to hold a depth of sadness, as if she was gazing into some distant memory. A single tear escaped my eye. I gently closed the locket.
the image of the woman lingering in my mind. For a long moment I sat there in the silent chamber, holding the box, the parchments, and the locket. The weight of history, of untold stories pressed down on me. This small collection of objects felt more significant than all the ruins I had explored. They whispered tales of lives lived, dreams pursued, and losses endured, in a time long gone. And yet, somehow, they felt intensely personal, as if they had been waiting for me all along. A strange sense of purpose, a purpose I didn't fully understand, began to bloom inside me, pushing aside the fear and unease that had haunted me since I first awoke in the overgrown courtyard.
The air hung heavy with the scent of damp earth and decaying wood, a strangely comforting aroma in the hushed stillness of the small chamber. My heart hammered a frantic rhythm against my ribs, a counterpoint to the quiet rustle of unseen things just beyond the stone walls. The wooden box sat in my trembling hands, its surface cool and smooth under my fingertips. Intricate carvings depicting scenes I couldn't quite decipher, swirling vines perhaps, or stylized birds, testified to a craftsmanship far beyond anything I'd encountered in the crumbling villa. I hesitated, a wave of apprehension washing over me. What secrets did this small, unassuming box hold? What would I find within? With trembling fingers, I carefully lifted the lid. The wood creaked softly, a tiny sound that echoed unnaturally loud in the confined space. Inside, nestled on a bed of faded velvet, lay a collection of parchments, their edges brittle and browned with age. They were tied together with a length of thin, fraying cord, the knot intricate and surprisingly secure. Beside the parchments lay a tarnished silver locket. Its surface was scratched and pitted, but I could still make out the faint outline of a design, perhaps a crest or a symbol of some kind, barely visible beneath the grime. My fingers, clumsy with nervousness, carefully lifted the parchment bundle. The paper felt fragile, as if it would crumble to dust at the slightest touch. I untied the cord, the thin strand snapping with a soft sigh. Each parchment was filled with a script I didn't recognize, elegant swirls and loops that spoke of a forgotten language. I traced a finger across the delicate lines, feeling the rough texture of the aged paper, the ghost of ink lingering beneath my touch. The script appeared meticulously written, suggesting that it contained something of immense importance. There was a strange elegance to the letters, a kind of gracefulness that belied the decay of its container. I turned my attention to the locket. Its weight was surprisingly substantial in my hand. I ran my thumb across the tarnished silver, feeling the uneven texture, the tiny scratches that told a silent story of time and neglect. With a deep breath, I attempted to open the locket, and it clicked open with a quiet snap. Inside, nestled on a bed of faded velvet, was a miniature portrait. It was faded, but I could make out the features of a young woman, her expression serene, almost wistful. Her eyes seemed to hold a depth of sorrow, as if she was gazing into some distant memory. A single tear escaped my eye. I gently closed the locket, the image of the woman lingering in my mind. For a long moment I sat there in the silent chamber, holding the box,
the parchments, and the locket. The weight of history, of untold stories, pressed down on me. This small collection of objects felt more significant than all the ruins I had explored. They whispered tales of lives lived, dreams pursued, and losses endured in a time long gone. And yet somehow they felt intensely personal, as if they had been waiting for me all along. A strange sense of purpose, a purpose I didn't fully understand, began to bloom inside me, pushing aside the fear and unease that had haunted me since I first awoke in the overgrown courtyard.
The air hung heavy with the scent of damp earth and decaying wood, a familiar perfume in this forgotten corner of the world. Sunlight filtered weakly through the gaps in the villa's crumbling roof, painted dappled patterns on the dusty floor. A surge of purpose, sharp and unexpected, jolted through me. The map, fragile as a butterfly's wing, lay open on a relatively flat stone, its faded lines promising a path out of this timeless prison. But before I ventured into the unknown, I needed to prepare. The shelter, my sanctuary from the night's chilling embrace, was woefully inadequate. My hands, roughened by days spent clambering over rubble, moved with a newfound diligence. I gathered dried leaves, their brittle texture whispering against my fingers, creating a softer, more insulated bed. The task was simple, almost meditative, yet it felt momentous. Each leaf, each carefully placed twig, was a step towards self-preservation, a testament to my growing resolve. I sought stronger branches, their bark cool and smooth under my touch, to reinforce the broken walls of my makeshift room. The effort brought a welcome distraction from the overwhelming weight of my isolation. Finding remnants of a broken wooden crate nearby, I felt a small spark of luck. The wood, though splintered and weathered, was still sturdy enough. With painstaking care, I fitted the larger pieces into the gaps in the wall, using smaller fragments to reinforce the structure. The work was slow and demanding, each hammer blow against the splintered wood echoing in the silent ruins. My muscles ached, a pleasant reminder of physical exertion, a counterpoint to the mental strain of the past days. The process felt almost ritualistic, a silent negotiation with this forgotten place, a plea for safe passage. As the sun climbed higher, casting long shadows across the courtyard, my shelter began to take shape. It wasn't much, a small, poorly constructed refuge, but it was mine. I had made it stronger, safer. It was a tangible symbol of my newfound strength, a testament to my will to survive. The sense of unease remained, a quiet hum beneath the surface of my determination, but it was overshadowed by a clearer, stronger feeling, hope. I tested the repaired walls, feeling the sturdiness of the mended structure beneath my touch. The wind, which had previously whistled through the gaps, now only whispered. The map, with its cryptic symbols and faded lines, still held the promise of escape. But for now, I was prepared. My shelter, though humble, was secure. My heart, though still heavy with the weight of uncertainty, beat with a renewed rhythm of purpose. The journey lay ahead, shrouded in the mystery of the unknown, but I was ready.
Taking a deep breath, I stepped onto the trail. The cool, damp earth yielded softly underfoot, a comforting contrast to the dry, crumbling stone of the villa. The dense canopy overhead immediately swallowed the sunlight, plunging me into a world of shadow and mystery. The air grew noticeably cooler, a damp chill clinging to my skin like a shroud. The scent of damp earth and decaying leaves was still present, but now it was overlaid with something else, a sharp, almost metallic tang that pricked at my nostrils. It was unsettling, but not unpleasant, like the smell of rain on iron. The path was barely more than a suggestion, a faint depression in the undergrowth that wound its way between ancient trees, their gnarled branches reaching up like skeletal fingers. Sunlight filtered down in fractured beams, creating an ethereal, dappled light that played tricks on my eyes. The shadows deepened and shifted, and for a moment I almost imagined I saw movement in the periphery, a flash of brown fur, perhaps, or the flicker of something darker. My heart pounded a little faster, but I forced myself to slow my breathing, to focus on the task at hand. The silence of the forest was profound, broken only by the occasional rustle of leaves or the chirping of unseen insects. It was a different silence than the silence of the ruins, a more active silence, filled with the subtle sounds of a living world. I listened intently, trying to discern any other sounds, the snap of a twig, the rustle of larger creatures moving through the undergrowth. Each small sound amplified in the stillness. Each shadow seemed to hold a potential threat. Yet, oddly, the fear wasn't as overwhelming as it had been in the ruins. Perhaps the sheer scale of the forest, its immensity, somehow lessened the feeling of vulnerability. It felt ancient, timeless, a place untouched by the decay I'd witnessed in the villa. The trail led me deeper into the woods, each step taking me farther from the ruins, from the crumbling remnants of a forgotten civilization. The trees grew taller, their branches thicker and more intertwined, creating a claustrophobic canopy that shut out almost all direct sunlight. I passed mossy boulders, their surfaces slick with dampness, and gnarled tree roots that snaked across the path like sleeping serpents. I ran my fingers along the rough bark of a particularly ancient tree. The wood was surprisingly smooth under years of accumulated moss. I leaned against its trunk for a moment, feeling its strength, its enduring presence. The coolness seeped into me, calming my racing pulse. The metallic scent grew stronger as I moved deeper, accompanied by a faint earthy aroma, almost sweet. I was beginning to recognize the smells, feel the textures, recognize the patterns of light and shadow. It wasn't just fear anymore. There was a kind of wonder in this ancient forest, a sense of mystery that both excited and intrigued me. This was a place where time seemed to slow, where the concerns of my daily life, whatever that life had been, felt distant and unreal. I continued onward, my footsteps growing steadier, my heart beating less with fear and more with a sense of purpose and quiet determination.
The forest floor, a carpet of damp needles and decaying leaves, yielded softly under my worn boots. Each step was measured, deliberate, my senses on high alert. The air, thick with the scent of pine and damp earth, hung heavy and still, broken only by the occasional rustle of unseen creatures in the undergrowth. The sun, filtered through the dense canopy above,
cast an ethereal, dappled light on the forest floor, transforming the familiar into something both beautiful and unsettling. My heart beat a steady rhythm against my ribs, a counterpoint to the silence that pressed in from all sides. I moved slowly, my gaze sweeping from side to side, searching for any sign of movement, any hint of danger. The trail, barely more than a suggestion of a path, wound its way through the trees, leading me deeper into the heart of the woods. Then, through the trees, I saw it. A weathered stone structure, half hidden amongst the ancient trees, its presence both surprising and strangely comforting. It was small, no more than a hut, its stone walls overgrown with moss and lichen, blending seamlessly with the forest around it. The roof, long since collapsed, left the interior open to the sky, a tapestry of interwoven branches and leaves forming a natural ceiling. A sense of curiosity, tinged with apprehension, pulled me towards it. What secrets did this forgotten place hold? What stories did its stones whisper to the wind? Approaching cautiously, I circled the structure, examining its weathered stones. They were rough, uneven, worn smooth in places by the passage of time and the elements. Some were partially covered by clinging vines, their tenacious roots snaking through the cracks and crevices. The air around the structure felt different, heavier, imbued with a sense of age and quietude. I could almost feel the weight of history pressing down on me, the echoes of lives lived and forgotten. I found a relatively clear opening in the overgrown stones and hesitated for a moment. A shiver ran down my spine, a mixture of cold and nerves. Taking a deep breath, I steadied myself and stepped inside. The air inside was cooler, damper than the already damped forest. The scent of decaying wood and earth filled my nostrils, a smell both earthy and somehow comforting. The walls, though crumbling, seemed solid enough, and I felt a palpable sense of relief at finding a potential shelter. The space was surprisingly small, just large enough to stand comfortably. Sunlight slanted in through gaps in the roof, illuminating the dusty floor. Dust motes danced in the slivers of light, each particle a tiny ghost of the past. The silence here was different from the silence of the forest. This was a quietude steeped in stillness, a tranquility born of age and decay. It felt peaceful, a sanctuary from the vast unknown that stretched beyond the stone walls. A sense of cautious hope settled over me, a counterpoint to the ever-present unease. This small, forgotten structure offered a fragile promise of shelter, perhaps even a moment of respite in this timeless wilderness.
The sun, a molten coin sinking behind the tree line, painted the forest floor in hues of amber and deep violet. The air, still carrying the scent of damp earth and pine, felt cooler now, a gentle hand urging me onward. My makeshift pack, a bundle of scavenged leaves and a few smooth stones, felt lighter than it had earlier. The weight of fear, though not entirely gone, had been replaced by a quieter, more persistent feeling, anticipation. The map, fragile as a butterfly's wing, lay tucked safely inside my tunic. Its faded lines, hinting at a path leading beyond the forest's edge, held a promise more potent than any fear. I traced the route with a fingertip, the rough paper scratching against my skin.
It wasn't a straight line. It meandered, twisting and turning like a river carving its way through the heart of a mountain. It mirrored the journey of my own heart, winding through uncertainty and dread, finally finding its way towards a calmer, less turbulent flow. I walked slowly, listening to the hushed whispers of the forest. The rustling leaves, the chirping of unseen crickets, these were no longer sounds of isolation, but a comforting chorus, a lullaby of the wild. Each step was measured, deliberate, each breath a conscious act of taking in the coolness of the evening air, the earthy scent of the undergrowth. The path led me to a small clearing bathed in the soft glow of the setting sun. A stream chuckled its way through the undergrowth, its water clear and inviting. I knelt beside it, cupping my hands and drinking deeply, the cool water a balm to my parched throat. The taste was pure, unadulterated, a taste of life itself. I looked up at the sky, a vast expanse of deepening blue sprinkled with the first pinpricks of stars. There was no dramatic revelation, no sudden burst of light or sound to signal my escape. There was simply the forest, the stream, and me. And in that simple truth, I found a profound sense of peace. The path ahead was uncertain, the journey long. But the panic, the overwhelming sense of being lost, had finally begun to fade. I knew now that I had survived the night. Not only that, but I had found my way through the darkness. I was no longer simply lost in time, but slowly, steadily finding my way back to myself, one careful step at a time. I was ready. The forest, in its vast and ancient silence, seemed to agree. The future, though still unclear, no longer held the same terror. It held, instead, the quiet promise of a journey continuing, however far, however unknown the path ahead might be.